It is trade season across the NBA, of course, outside of the NBA Finals between the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. You have all of the other teams across the NBA looking ahead to the offseason. Trade targets, free agency, NBA draft, the NBA calendar about to get ratcheted up, and things are about to heat up. So coming up on today's 76ers now, we're going to rank our top 5 76ers trade targets. But first, we want to hear from you. Who is your number 1 trade target for Philadelphia? Who do you most want the Sixers and Daryl Morey to acquire this offseason via a trade? If a trade were to come to fruition, let us know down in the comment section right now. Let's set the foundation and let's set the table by first taking a look at the 76ers trade assets. As far as players go, not a lot of player trade assets for Philadelphia. As far as draft picks go, you see on the right side of your screen, that's where Philadelphia has some strength as far as trade negotiations. The player assets to the left, Paul Reed, Ricky Council, Jeff Doughton. You have the 16th overall pick, the 41st overall pick this year. And then on the right side of your screen, you have the future draft capital. And what's great with where Philadelphia's position here, whether they use these picks in a trade or not, they use them for themselves now or not, or they just hold on to these picks for the future, this gives you organizational flexibility because it's better than where the Sixers were in years past when they did not have any draft capital. So you're looking at some good draft picks too with the 2026 first from OKC, Houston, and the Clippers, another 2026 first. Then you have a first via the Clippers in 2028 and your own first that year. And then in 2029, another first, you swap with the best with the Los Angeles Clippers there. So those are the 76ers' current trade assets. As for the best and top 5 76ers trade targets here on this show, we start off with Jimmy Butler, who Philadelphia has admitted they made a mistake in trading him to the Miami Heat after the 2019 playoff run. Jimmy Butler has familiarity with this organization. He's very close with Joel Embiid. If you want to talk about a big-time player who makes big-time plays in big-time situations, that's Jimmy Butler. He can still get the job done on both ends of the floor. And can he bring the best out of Joel Embiid as far as his psyche? That's what I'm interested about. Jimmy Butler has done a great job in lifting these Miami Heat teams who have really had no business in winning playoff series, making deep playoff runs, and making it to 2 NBA Finals to new heights. And I think that that's what he would be able to do with Philadelphia. Of course, he never takes the regular season all that serious. Over the last 4 years, he has not played more than 64 games in any of those seasons. The production, very good in the regular season. Then when it comes time for the playoffs, he turns into a maniacal, cold-blooded killer who will slit your throat, kick you in the balls, and hit a dagger of a shot. What he's seeking here is a 2-year, $113 million max extension. According to Keith Pompey, as we've talked about, the 76ers are willing to pay him that max extension. Are the Heat? Time will tell. That's going to decide a lot as far as Butler's future. Trade target number 2. My number 1 trade target for the Sixers as far as price, the player, his age, most importantly, his fit. Mikal Bridges. The Sixers have an opportunity here to right their wrongs and bring back Bridges, who started at Villanova, went to Great Valley High School. The Sixers drafted him and then traded him away for Zaire Smith. The Brooklyn Nets have said, we do not want to trade Bridges, but can you convince them to do that with a really good offer? And if the Nets decide to rebuild, the Sixers have a lot of draft picks that the Nets could rebuild with. So the Sixers could send those picks theoretically in a trade to Brooklyn to help that rebuilding process. Bridges' career so far, 365 games with the Suns, 109 games played with the Brooklyn Nets. He's been a completely different player with Brooklyn. His development has been tremendous. And his role has obviously changed, and that's a big reason why the numbers have been on the uptick. With the Suns, more of that third or fourth option, and was an excellent defender, a timely shooter, 12 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 50% from the field nearly, and then 37.5% from three-point range. But then, in the KD trade, he gets traded to Brooklyn, and with more ample offensive opportunities, his game has gone to another level. He's added a little dribble drive, a dribble pull up, and overall, just a larger offensive output. 21 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 44.7% from the field, and 37.3% from three-point range with a lot of volume. That's my number one trade target, with 3 trade targets to get to here on this show. Chip, you think that he would excel as a third option. Why?
So we saw Bridges back when he was with the Phoenix Suns. They made that run to the finals, and Bridges was a huge part of that, but he wasn't the number one guy, right? You had Devin Booker, you had Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton. Bridges played a role, and he played that role tremendously well. He was a 3-and-D wing, would spot up in the corner, spot up on the outside, play hard defense. He wasn't asked to do too much, and he was great. And I think he has exceeded most people's expectations since he got traded for Kevin Durant to the Brooklyn Nets, right? But he's just not a number one. I think that's a little bit out of his wheelhouse, out of his skill set. Where he excels is being that number 3 option, and in Philadelphia, he'd be able to do that. I also want to add this in. The Nets have said, as you mentioned, they don't want to trade Bridges. They want to build around and get another star with Bridges. Look, if I'm the Nets, Bridges has 2 more years under his contract. This upcoming season, the season after that. Making just $22 million.
Yep.
Do you really think you can win a championship with him as your first or maybe second best player? I don't think so. So if you're the Nets, when are you going to get the most value for him? It's going to be this offseason or even, possibly this upcoming trade deadline, because teams will pay more to have him for 2 more seasons before they have to pay him than if you trade him next offseason where he's on an expiring deal and he's going to be looking for a contract extension. So I know the Nets, they've said they don't want to trade him for the 3rd overall pick from the Rockets. They want to keep him, but look, Brooklyn, you got to start building for the future here and seeing, the highest upside you can get for your team. And I think that could be trading Bridges for a lot of picks the Sixers do have.
With that, we ask you this. Do the 76ers need to trade for a 3rd star? And I don't think that Bridges would be that 3rd star, quote unquote, just maybe the most perfect 3rd option. Why for yes and for no? Type what you think down below in the comment section. Today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks, by the way, the largest independently run daily fantasy sports app in North America and the best daily fantasy sports app in North America. Daily fantasy sports made easy. I'm telling you, they make it so easy. The process to just submit your picks and also the easy payouts too. You pick 2 or more players who choose more or less on their projected stats and you can win up to 25 times your money. You can also get a $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS. Our picks for Game 2 of the NBA Finals. Celtics up 1-0 after they shot the lights out. Luka Doncic, more than 31.5 points in a must-win game. Jason Tatum, more than 14.5 rebounds and dimes. He was doing a lot of other things outside of scoring in Game 1. And how about the performance of Kristaps Porzingis? Man, the Porzingis minutes were huge. And then Kyrie Irving. Was he a little bit shaken up, returning to Boston and getting booed every time he touched the rock? I think things cooled down and they slowed down for Kyrie, more than 22.5 points. Win big money, withdraw your winnings, pick more, pick less. Pick PrizePicks as your daily fantasy sports app go-to. Trade target number 3 for the Sixers and our top 5 trade target segment, Lauri Markkanen. Forward, Utah Jazz. This helps you in a couple of different areas. Young player, ascending, very affordable contract, really good size at 7 feet, 240 pounds, a player who's continued to get better over the last couple of years, and a player who I think would fit along very, very nicely alongside Joel Embiid, and you have the feeling he's only starting to just hit his stride. And can you imagine, by looking at these numbers, the different lineup combinations that you'd be able to try it out there with Lauri Markkanen? 23 points per game last year, 8+ boards, 48% from the deck, almost 40% from 3. He's been at 39% the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, look at how much the scoring production has gone up. from that stint with the Bulls and then with the Cavaliers as well. Been an excellent player. Chip, he's entering the final year of his deal. Does he want to stay in a losing situation? If he maybe sprinkles out there that he wants to leave the Jazz, do the Jazz trade him to try to get some value back? That's, of course, a part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, right? The Jazz, the past couple of years, start off the season decently. You get a little excited. Oh, Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton. Can this team make a little bit of noise in the West? And then every year they tail off. They end up tanking, looking for another future draft pick. When does it end for the Utah Jazz? And Lauri Markkanen is still young, so not to say he's in a rush to win a championship or anything. But entering the last year of his deal, the Jazz, if they want to keep him, are going to have to pay him big money, which will in turn limit their ability to make their team better around him. I don't think he can be your best player on a championship team. I think he could be your second best player on a championship team. And on the Sixers, he'd probably be your third best player, which would be ideal, such an ideal fit. So, for Lauri, it comes down to how long are you willing to stick around in Utah. Doesn't seem like a guy who would ask out of a situation, but you never know with these players. We see it every year, guys that you wouldn't expect to ask out, guys that end up changing teams. And, if the Jazz go through another year, maybe up to the trade deadline of next season, and they're bad once again, and they don't want to pay Lauri Markkanen $30+ million, maybe they'd be willing to dish him out in the last year of his contract for some of those picks that I mentioned earlier the Sixers do have.
Yeah, and keep in mind, some of these trade targets now, Chip alluded to it, they can be NBA trade deadline acquisitions as well, depending on how next year starts for those respective players and those respective organizations. Coming in at number 4 is Donovan Mitchell of the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs in a very interesting spot. They fired J.B. Bickerstaff, their head coach. They might have to choose between one guard and Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland. Who is it going to be? And D-Mitch, there's just been so many rumors for multiple years that he wants to go to the New York Knicks and he wants to go to the Miami Heat. There's never really been anything of Donovan Mitchell is going to be a Cleveland Cavalier for the rest of his career. That's what we don't know. What we do know is that D-Mitch, Spider, he's a bucket getter. And a bucket getter on this team alongside Maxey and Embiid would prove to be a fascinating case study and dynamic. For me, I don't think it would work because I think you have too many cooks in the kitchen with 3 players in D-Mitch, Embiid, Maxey, who just have to command the basketball in order to be effective. They're not comfortable with really playing off ball. The production, never been an issue for Donovan Mitchell. Showing up in the playoffs, he always performs very well under the bright lights. And he's a shoo-in to give you 25 to 30 points every single night. But going back to that big, massive question, how does he coexist with Tyrese Maxey? 1, you don't want to take away from Tyrese Maxey development. 2, you don't want Tyrese Maxey to be unhappy. He is the face, arguably, of your franchise moving forward as Joel Embiid gets a little bit older. You don't want to rub him the wrong way and put him in an unfair spot. You want to put together a basketball unit that makes sense for your star players. And I don't think that D-Mitch, Chip, makes sense alongside the current existing stars on this team.
Yeah, and it's interesting because of the players we've gone through so far, I do feel like Donovan Mitchell is the most likely to be moved, but I think he also comes with the most questions for the Sixers because of the fit, as you said, and you only have 1 year to determine if he can fit with Maxey or not because Mitchell's a player option next offseason. He's going to opt out. It's about $37 million. He can make way more than that in the open market.
Yep.
So he's going to opt out. So you have 1 year to determine, can he fit with Maxey? Can he not? If he doesn't, he can just walk for nothing next offseason. So it's a high risk, a high reward if it does work out. It'd be a very dynamic backcourt if they could figure it out. But, that's the reason I have him 4th here on this list is just has some more question marks, some more unknowns, whereas players like Lauri Markkanen, Jimmy Butler, Mikal Bridges, all much better fits with the way that the Sixers are currently constructed around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey.
One more player to get to here on the show coming in as our trade target number 5, a player who we've also talked about a lot here on the program, or as Pat McAfee would say, program. Tell my high school baseball coach used to say, we're a good baseball program. Shout out to Mr. Harkins, Bayard Rustin High School. If you're watching, how you doing? Brandon Ingram coming in at number 5 here. And BI, according to reports, some of the speculation out there, is not a player who the New Orleans Pelicans want to extend, who they want to keep around, who they see as a long-term viable option for the Pelicans' future, and might get in the way of the development and the on-court synergy that the Pelicans have working right now with players existing on that team like Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum. You also have Herb Jones, who maybe is going to step into a larger role. Jose Alvarado is a player who New Orleans really likes. So Brandon Ingram might just be on the outside looking in as far as the equation, the rotation goes. And at the end of the year, that was also the case because head coach Willie Green, Sixers legend, by the way, benched him. And down the stretch in some big games, Brandon Ingram was not a part of the rotation. He didn't play. And because of that, did his confidence get damaged a little bit? BI is an interesting player because he's young. He's a wing who can score at all three levels. We've seen some great moments from him. He made drastic improvements after he spent a couple of years with the Los Angeles Lakers, and since then, he's been that smooth operator on the floor who can get to his shot seamlessly, get to his spot on the floor, and really live multiple areas of the floor. And he can give you 20, 25 points per game per night. But can Ingram be a fit on and off the court? Is he worth paying $50 million per year? Analytically, I get worried here because I think that Daryl Morey might look at a player like BI and say, analytically, we really think that he can work. And has Daryl Morey earned your trust that he thinks that it can work? You know, this offseason, for the first time in a long time, he's not having to undo mistakes that were previously made before his regime. But the pressure is also on him to put together a team that can finally get over that hump of getting past the damn second round. Honorable mention trade candidates here on top of the 5 that we discussed. DeJounte Murray, I actually think that because he is comfortable playing off ball, he could be a decent fit alongside Tyrese Maxey. You want a player who does fit in well culturally and basketball-wise, that's Alex Caruso and Dorian Finney-Smith, because they can both shoot, they can both defend at a really high level and guard multiple positions. On Thursday's show, we talked about Bogdanovich and then Malcolm Brogdon, but obviously there, the injury concerns very much a concern. Be sure to subscribe to us here on 76ers. Now we continue to cook up great content for all of you, and our goal here to be as informative, thoughtful, insightful, engaging as possible here on the show. It's compared to a lot of the other content creators on YouTube who do a great job, but we believe in ourselves as well. And if you believe in us, hit that sub button.